Hello, and welcome everybody to another episode of Strick and Roll. I'm your host, Shwin, and this is episode 38. I am joined by not first time guest, but first time in a while on this one anyway. His name is Tyrese London. You know him on Twitter as at London's Theory. Tyrese, how are you doing this Saturday morning-ish time?
Manchester lost. It's a horrible day.
It is not a great day, but
I will
London
take
didn't lose.
I will take David Jagia and I will slit his throat myself.
Wow, that's a lot.
Oh
That's
my god, man. How
yeah,
long?
he's
How
yeah,
long?
he's pretty terrible. But we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about basketball. That sport with the round orange ball. Before we get started, though, I do have to make a few announcements. The first being that the Strickland has an Instagram. Check that out. That is at the Strick.land on Instagram. We are posting all kinds of new content out there. The Strickland also has a YouTube channel where you may be watching this podcast. If you are and you haven't done so already, please hit like and then subscribe to the channel. That would be a huge help to us. The Strickland also has merchandise, which I'm not wearing any of today. But if you want some of it, check it out on our website. We have t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, mugs, even water bottles, all different kinds for your personal liking. Check that out. That is on our website. And then finally, the Strickland has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland, the podcast that I host every Friday with Prez. You also get access to the Strickland Mailbag, hosted by Andrew Steele, aka Doug, aka the Doug Bag, alongside Dallas Amico. You also that comes out every other week. You also get access to the Strickland Discord, where the conversation never stops. There are further tiers. There's a $9 tier that gets you access to Strick and Roll, this podcast that I host, where I get to rant and rave about the Knicks even more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Miranda, one of the best in the business, the recap god, as we like to call him. There are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and $100 tier. Those come with a variety of additional benefits like listening on our pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially co-hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day. All of this is brought to you by BetOnline, which is your number one resource for all your basketball info, stats, news, and scores. Get the latest odds and lines and the latest matchup reports for this year's NBA playoffs. Bet Online is your sports intel headquarters this season, as we have you covered for all your insider sports wagering needs. From basketball, MLB, NHL hockey, golf to UFC and boxing. The fastest and easiest way to get your betting info, including live betting options and your favorite casino and card games, available to play right from your home. Get into the action today, so head to the website or use your mobile device to join, and be sure to use our promo code BLEAV, BLEAV, to receive your 50% bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts. And now, without further ado, no more capitalism on this podcast here. I guess like we could start with this. Since this is the most current Knicks news, Julius Randle underwent arthroscopic surgery on his left ankle and is expected to be ready for the New York Knicks' training camp in the fall. The team announced Saturday. Um,
Adrian Roskonowski is a fucking grifter. That man, I don't know what he did for that scoop, but he did something heinous. I
he's
mean,
CIA. That's it.
it's probably something heinous still. Um, I mean, like, it helps. I'm glad he's getting surgery for it. I mean, spraining your ankle twice in a month is not good for anybody. But like, it does give it some context, but you still can't like forget the effort. I don't think you can forget the fact that like he was still laboring, and if it was that bad, there is an argument that maybe he should have sat. But like, maybe that opens up a different can of worms where you're like, um, why did you sit? I remember fucking Jeremy Lin sitting when like he tweaked his knee or whatever, and people gave him shit for that. So, it was noble in some aspects. In other aspects, it kind of felt like it was a detriment towards the team. I'm not glad he did it, but I can respect the fact that he did it. So I'm kind of just like glad. I hope he gets better. I hope he's good come training camp and for the season start. It's arthroscopic, which means that it shouldn't be too bad. It's on the lesser end of surgeries. I mean, surgery, surgery, but still on the lesser end of surgeries. But yeah, like ultimately there was context to his effort and stuff like that, and I do feel like he does have effort problems, but it felt like it was a bit more heightened in the playoffs, and part of that was injury, part of that was just general motor. So
Yeah, I don't really know how much the injury affects effort. Like, it can affect execution, which, okay, maybe that's part of why he struggled on both ends of the floor. It can affect your literal agility and movement, which, okay, again, maybe that affected him on the floor. It can affect obviously your explosiveness and all those type of things. I'm sorry, like I don't really understand everybody being like, "Oh, well, this adds so much context to everything." What context did it add? We knew he was injured. Like, this isn't news. This isn't something we didn't know. It's not like this isn't like the fake LeBron stuff when he loses in finals and he's like, "Oh, actually I broke my hand. I forgot to mention that." Like, this isn't that, okay? This is an injury we knew he had. It was very obvious, right? Like, he suffered an ankle injury against the Heat at the end of the regular season in the 77th game of the season. And then he re aggravated the injury in game 5 against Cleveland. He didn't play game 1 against Miami while he was resting that injury. Then he came back. I have some. I actually have always respected the fact that he is clearly a durable player and plays through injuries. I mean, if you play enough in the NBA, you're going to get injured. So the fact that he plays as many games as he does clearly shows that he plays through injuries. And, you know, I don't really find anything noble about him playing through the injury if that's what he was able to give us off the injury. Now, if, like, to me, you can't have it both ways. It can't both be, oh, well, see, he was injured. That's why he couldn't hustle back on defense. That's why he had to throw his hands up exasperated when he committed a stupid fucking turnover. That was all his fault. That's why he had to, make brain dead plays offensively. That's why he had to take terrible shots. That's why he had to take a step back jumper over Bam Adebayo with 18 seconds left on the shot clock. Like, if okay, fine. Let's say I give you all that. Okay, so then he just played terribly? Like, if that's what he was able to give us off an injury, then maybe he just shouldn't have fucking played. And anybody being like, well, if you would have killed him if he didn't play, when have I ever killed Julius Randle for being injured or ever like, and who would do that? The guy has, again, played through so many injuries. He's barely missed game time. I think last year the only reason he missed the end of the season is because they basically told him to shut it down. The year before, when we went, 41-31, the We Here season, I think he missed one basketball game that year, and that was because, and then he came back right after that. Like, his durability earns him the right and kind of the benefit of the doubt if he had chosen to sit out. I think if he had chosen to sit out for the first 2 or 3 games of the Heat series, everybody would have just been like, man, he must really be hurt. Because that's how I felt going into the Cleveland series. I thought he might miss the first couple games of that too. And I was like, if he's really hurt, that is what it is. We saw the injury he suffered at the end of the regular season against Miami. He couldn't put weight on his ankle. No, I would never question whether he's not somebody that you can question if he's not playing. Like, well, could he play? We know he plays. We know that he will play if he's able to. But sometimes if that is what he was capable of giving us, then he shouldn't have fucking played. And like, if the argument is, well, him playing benefited us and we wouldn't have even won 2 games without him, and I'm not sure about all that, but let's say that's true. Like, okay, so he can't just get credit then for what he did, and then when with like the struggles, well, oh no, see, no, he was injured then. That's not how it works. Like, if you're on the floor, it is what it is, and let's stop pretending he was the only guy that was injured in this series. Jalen Brunson was injured. I didn't see him dogging it. Jimmy Butler was injured. I didn't see him dogging it. Like, he was not the only guy dealing with injuries. Mitchell Robinson got hurt in game 1 of that series against Miami. I don't see anybody talking about that. I haven't seen a soul talk about that. But he was clearly injured after the first game of the series. Shout out Gabe Vidson, who's a dirty piece of shit. He was clearly injured. I don't see anybody talking about it, but I saw a lot of people that were trying to shift blame away from Julius, talk about, oh, well, he doesn't space the floor. We saw his limitations in this series. We saw, okay, fine. But he was injured. So how could we even assess that? Oh my God. How can we do that? That's crazy.
I mean, it's just like, it's the playoffs. You're going to get injured.
You're going to get injured. So I'm sorry. I don't want to hear about this stuff. Like, I respect Julius Randle's durability, his toughness, his willingness to play through injuries. It doesn't change anything for me. It doesn't change a single feeling I have about his play, good or bad.
I think though what it does is give it context, and it's like some people were like, "Oh, doesn't matter," and I'm like, to an extent, I can agree, but also like 2 ankle sprains at the span of a month, that is going to have an effect on play, but at the same time, it should not have an effect on effort, and it should not have an effect on how you are able to make yourself and your team better. And I think that's kind of my takeaway from it.
I don't. I just don't think his play is because he was injured. I'm sorry. Like I just don't really buy it. It wasn't just his shooting percentages that were the problem. His
It was his
decision making
processing.
was a problem. His processing is a problem. I think he had a 1-to-1 turnover ratio in the playoffs, which is pretty terrible considering his
Just
usage.
about, yes.
Like these are the things that are a problem. And I'm so over, like, was he if he's on the floor, right? He was on the floor last time I checked. Okay, you were on the floor. Great. Guess what? That's what I judge you on. I'm not really interested in doing this whole, oh well, this circumstance, that circumstance, and this. Give me a break, man. Like, and if we're gonna be real, if we want to have a real conversation on Julius Randle, I thought he was melting down at the end of the regular season. Not. It wasn't like a total fucking. Oh my god, he's turning into an asshole. Like, or he's just completely turning into shit. But this was the game he hurt his ankle in the regular season. Okay, this was his line in 14 minutes and 42 seconds. 1 of 5 from the field, 5 rebounds, 1 assist, 2 turnovers, 1 foul, 3 points. That was his line in that game. He was awful in that game. The game before that against Houston, he has a good game. 26 points on 19 shots, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. Houston sucks. Congratulations. The game before that was the game against Orlando. He had 23 points on 20 shots, 9 rebounds, 4 assists. That was the game where he lost his mind on Quickly for trying to take him away from the ref. Game before that, at Miami, 15 points, 9 assists, 6 rebounds, 7 of 16 from the field, 4 turnovers. Like, I think there were already signs he's holding down. He did have that 57-point game that in between that Minnesota game right before Miami. But like, I think if you look at, his play, there was like that, the Miami and Boston games, he was great in those games. If you look at his numbers after that, all right, I mean, this is just his average. 23.5 points on 19.2 shots, seven rebounds. So the rebounding was coming down. 3.8 assists to 2.5 turnovers. These are his shooting splits. 41.2% from the field, 27.2% from 3, 75% from the line. And mind you, this includes the 57-point game. So he was already, you were starting to see a lot of bad stuff from him from a physical perspective, and again, before the ankle injury. But like more than that, you just saw a lot of the same type of mental errors and a lot of stuff that seemed like frustration boiling over, which you weren't even sure where it was coming from. I mean, we can talk about the Orlando one where he flipped out quickly, but the one that was even more crazy to me was that one against the Clippers, where it was like a tight game, end of the third quarter, you're down a point. He elbows, who was it? Did they have a Zeller? Or did they have a Zeller or a Plumlee?
It was Plumlee.
Yeah. He elbowed a Plumlee in the face, gets a flagrant. They scored both free throws. He's flipping out at everybody on the sideline to the point that like they had to take him away from the bench, and then Johnny Bryant had to come over and do his like I'm the Randall whisperer thing. And I'm just like, I don't know, man. I'm so over this shit with him. And it's like, yeah, man, okay, like a couple years ago, oh, he doesn't have a point guard. This oh well, his ankle got injured, so we can't. No, that's not how it works. You're never gonna have perfect circumstances in the NBA. You're just not. Like, look at the teams that are in. Look at who's in the final right now. Like, Denver hasn't had some perfect fucking deal the entire way. Jamal Murray missed like a year and a half. Did anybody, like it's very, very rare. Everything is going to work out exactly how you want it to. And you know what? Like this year, Denver's obviously had a good run of health. And guess what? Like, most of the time, if you look at these teams over the last few years that have win a championship, right? A lot of them get it's because they just happen to be the
Healthiest team.
they get the luck of the draw. Other than that, like you have to deal with shit. And even Miami, right? Like, you know, where we want to say it's not like Miami had what the fourth most games missed to injury this year. And like I actually think they've benefited from Tyler Hero being out, but that's still like me making an assumption. Like he was a starter, he's missed basically the entire playoffs. So it's not like they are, getting the amazing health here. Jimmy Butler obviously he got hurt in round two. He missed a game. I don't see any Knicks fans saying like, "Oh, well, Butler missed a game." So no, like we're like, "Oh yeah, great. We fucking won 4-2. Like it was a competitive series." He missed a game. Gabe Vincent missed a game against Boston. You think anybody would have fucking held that up as an excuse they blew game 7? No. Nobody would have said anything. Right? Like this is what it is. You deal with injuries and you move on. Is anybody giving Boston a pass because Malcolm Brogdon hurt his arm jerking off? No, nobody cares. Like nobody's
but it's also fuck Malcolm Brogdon. So
yeah, well, yeah. I mean, Brogdon shouldn't be jerking off in the first place. That's a crime. But like
Mormonism.
Yes. No, but it's just you're never going to get everything perfect. It's never going to happen. And if we can't just if you want to keep Randle and you still believe in Randle and all these things, that's fine. I disagree with you. That's fine. It's a reasonable opinion to have, I guess. But like, you still should be able to just look at his performance in the playoffs and be like, yeah, look, he played bad. And yeah, I understand the ankle was hurt, but he played bad. He played bad. His effort wasn't there where it needed to be. Just say that. Don't give me don't try to like, oh, it's a fucking no, it's not. It's not an excuse. All it is a fact of life. Congratulations, you were hurt. So was everybody. Nobody cares. Move the fuck on. And we knew he was hurt. So I really don't understand why any of this is some like,
Revelation.
oh my God, can't believe it.
Yeah, like it just it's I mean, like there's context and there's also like things you need to value, but it's also like there's a baseline of effort and competency you should expect from an NBA player in the playoffs, and that was not met even with the injury. So it's like if that's your excuse and that's your way to kind of like justify the entire run, you can't do that because it just does not compute.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. I don't want to talk about Julius Randle's bullshit anymore. Let's talk a little bit about this upcoming NBA draft that is happening. The Knicks don't have a pick right now
Yet.
They do have avenues, or they have many opportunities probably to move into the first round or second round, whatever they want to do. Given the assets they have at their disposal. What do you think? Like, I mean, if you were the Knicks, like, what are you looking for in this draft? And based on that, where do you think that they would need to move into to get the type of player or the broad archetype of player that you want?
I mean, ideally, you're looking for someone like 6'6" to 6'9" who can kind of play anywhere from the 2 to the 4 and would be able to potentially give you minutes down the road. I don't think whoever they draft this year will be in the rotation because you have Deuce, you already have the 9 that are coming back. Like the team is bringing back their entire rotation from last year, maybe another shooter. So like if you're drafting somebody, you're drafting them to be kind of like a project for a year, maybe 2, and then maybe year 3, year 4, you're looking for like return on investment. But I think you kind of just need shooting. You need somebody who can legitimately space the floor and be a threat from the outside. For all of the benefits the Knicks offense had in the regular season, in the playoffs, it became you could leave a lot of these guys open, and the Knicks did not have enough shooting to punish them. And we saw it because I think their run in the playoffs was one of the worst shooting runs of any team in NBA history. So that needs to be fixed. I think ideally you're looking for somebody who could play that 3-4 spot eventually down the line. So who can like sub in and give them that shooting that they need because big shooting is really important in today's NBA. I think they're kind of looking at that late first round, so like the 25 to the 30 range.
They did interview Gigi Jackson, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes, and they should not. I mean, they're doing it for due diligence, but Gigi Jackson fucking sucks. So I don't want Gigi Jackson on this team. I will probably talk about that on Pod Strickland or
But he,
fucking yeah.
but he is on. He is in that range though that we're
He's
talking about.
he's in that range. Um, you've really gotta believe in your development staff, and you have to put him like he is not touching the big club year one. If you are drafting Gigi Jackson, if you're drafting Gigi Jackson, you're putting him in Westchester for 2 years and telling him, okay, we want you to work on as much fundamentals as you possibly can, because by the time you come out, you'll be 20,
He's only
21.
18.
He's gonna be 18 on draft night,
Mm.
and he'll start the season at 18. So yeah, I think he probably might be the youngest player in the NBA when he starts. So if you're drafting him, you're basically saying tools are there, but he just needs to be molded. And I think my one pushback on that would be like it's kind of the Cam Reddish redux, where it's like, oh, a really talented guy with intangibles and wingspan who just was dog shit. And it's like, granted, South Carolina not the best situation for spacing, and he had to do way too much within that offense. But like, I'm not too big on drafting for tools, and he goes against their entire draft philosophy because he's really bad at BPM. He's not an older prospect. He's very raw, and it kind of feels like it would be such a left turn from what they want in the draft that like I can't see that actually happening. But they're probably just doing due diligence, which I commend them for doing because they should be doing due diligence. That's what Walt Perrin has done his entire career, and I don't want them to stop anytime soon. If I were the Knicks, I mean, I'm looking into Dariq Whitehead. I think that's probably my number one right now because he's young, but he has a projectable skill, which is shooting. He shot 43%.
I also think he can play the 3. Like
Yes,
I know he's listed as a 2, but I'm pretty sure he can play the 3.
he's a 3.
Yeah.
I think he's a 3. Like, I think the injuries kind of took away a bit of his mobility. He's had a decent amount of ankle injuries, so I think, and he's not scrawny. Like he's 220, 6'6", 220. So like he's a 3, and I think he fits really well with what the team wants. His box plus minus isn't sexy, but like given the fact that he was dealing with injury, like 43% from the field, 80% from the free throw line, like project you can project a lot of things with him, especially if he gets back those athleticism games. It's kind of like the AJ Griffin bet from last year, and I know they were interested in AJ Griffin, so it's kind of like okay, you have that level of shooter here. I don't think he'll be as efficient as AJ Griffin because AJ Griffin was legitimately like 58 true shooting, damn near 50, 40, 90 as a fucking rookie, which, whew, and somehow he doesn't get played. But like, yeah, so I think Dariq Whitehead would probably be an option. Uh, Kolibali is going lotto for whatever reason because the fucking Raptors have an issue. Um, I think Pods might go top 20. So I'm just kind of looking at shooting. So like Julian Strother, my Puerto Rican son, um, Press's Puerto Rican son, the Strickland's Puerto Rican son. But I think I'm kind of just looking at big shooting, like 6'6" to 6'9" wings who could kind of fill that role that the team needs.
Yeah. I I think a wing would be good. I also think a 4-5, somebody like that, is also a major need on this team. Um, it's obvious that Tibbs is never going to trust Obi to play with Randall. And, yes, they have options. They could play hard at the 4, whatever, but you're losing a lot of secondary shot blocking potential there. Regardless of which wing you want to nominate as the 4 in those type of small ball scenarios. Not saying that those shouldn't be options, but there are situations where they're just not going to work. And if the Knicks want to try to, there's a difference between play small and spread the floor, play 5 out. The Knicks don't have a 5 out scenario right now because Tibbs doesn't trust. It's basically because he doesn't trust Obi. And because of that, he'll always play with Mitch or Hartenstein on the floor at the 5. I think a guy I would be very interested in the mocks I've looked at, he's, trending around the late first, but I think he might go earlier. I'm pretty interested in Noah Clowney. I don't think he's somebody who'd factor in the next 2 years necessarily. But he's going to be 18 on draft night. Also,
Yep.
I like his measurables. I think his overall skill set is intriguing,
It's
if not
Moby
full.
Light. It's Moby Light.
Yeah, it's He is very. If you watch his defensive clips, in like very specifically, there are a lot of like Mobley type flashes. And offensively, I know Alabama used him almost exclusively as a stretch four or stretch 4-5, whatever you want to put it. The shot is rough. I think he shot 28.6% from three this year.
28.6.
The shot didn't go in, but the shot isn't broken. And I know, look, the 3-point percentage wasn't great. I think even his free throw percentage was around 64-65%. So there's definitely work to be done, but that shot isn't broken. And a guy that I think he reminds me of in terms of a dude in the draft a couple years ago that I thought was intriguing for the Knicks for similar reasons is Usman Garuba. The difference being, I think he's in much better physical condition than Garuba, and two, the shot doesn't need anywhere near the technical refinement that Garuba's always was going to. And Garuba's obviously, I mean, I don't know, the Houston thing is its own big clusterfuck, but I still think that's a massive need for this team. Like if they are committed to sticking with Julius, at least for this next season, they need to get somebody who is an option to play 5 out. Somebody that Tibbs is going to trust. And I understand Clowney. Like, it's funny. Like, I don't think Clowney would address that need right now. I still think they would actually need to use their MLE to go get somebody like a Trey Lyles, somebody we've talked about, or I've talked about at least previously, but somebody of that ilk, like Naz Reid would be another one. But like they need somebody who can check the box of Tibbs would broadly trust them to provide some rim protection and play the 5 next to Julius, but can also credibly stretch the floor. So there's not a lot of those guys. And I think a guy like Noah Clowney, the fact that I see him, being mocked in the 20s, I think is personally fucking insane. Not because he doesn't need refinement, but because those are the type of players that like I understand he needs time to work through shit, but if you give him time, I think in like 2 or 3 years you could look back at a kid like that, and what he provides just adds so many dimensions to your team. Like I don't know. I'm admittedly like working very far from behind in this draft, but I think it's fucking crazy that he's being knocked that late.
Yeah, I think mocking him that late is kind of a result of the environment of the league. Like, I agree with your assessment that he's probably going to take 2, maybe 3 years to actually like really pop. And a lot of GMs just don't have 2 or 3 years to protect a guy like that, especially when you're drafting higher in the lottery and you're like, well, if this pick doesn't hit, I might lose my job. So I think for the Knicks, because the rotation is so set in stone, you know how many of those guys are coming back. You know that even if you want to expand it to 10, you have a guy like Deuce who's in front. You have the MLE that you can use to go out and get a guy. So there's so many players to factor into, like getting a guy who might need maybe a year or 2 of development, who projects really well and profiles really well, would be a really good use of resources, especially in this draft, because next draft is not good. So I'd be okay with getting Clowney. Um, like he fits what ideally they need. Like really solid rebounder, has shown the ability to has shown some passing chops, really good at getting those steals and deflections that like this team really doesn't have. Like we are not a good stocks generating team. Like we stick out a bunch of positional defenders out there. Like, and it works, but it also doesn't like give us opportunities to go in transition. And despite the fact that he didn't shoot as well as he could have, like his BPM was still 8.3. So like he was a really good college player. And I feel like
and to that point, I was talking about this with the press, but like his BPM is almost weighted down because, and I don't look, I'm again just getting around to really doing any draft stuff, but like from what Prez has told me and from what little I've seen, he's probably not some like great shot creator inside the arc, but because of how much they used him specifically as like a pick and pop guy and just a pure floor spacer, his BPM is almost like weighted down because he clearly, like, while he can become that player, he's not that player now, and they force him another role. Like this is not a clean comparison, but in some ways it's similar to being like, hey, Obi, just be a floor spacer. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, maybe his efficiency isn't going to be where it is because you're asking him to do stuff that is not maybe his forte. But I think in Clowney, the BPM, like you mentioned, it's still good. I think his scoring efficiency could probably be higher if he was used a little bit differently. But I mean, I think it's fine for his development. I think that's probably it's a key thing for him to develop. So I'm not actually. I think it's fine that Alabama was asking him to do that.
Yeah, I think when he gets to the league, he's going to be asked to play that role a lot because to keep him on the court and he's not going to get a lot of shots, he's going to need to be able to be comfortable taking threes. So having him be comfortable taking those threes, having him in a situation where it's like you're launching or you're driving, getting him in that kind of style is good for his development. And I do think that he would be asked to do that in Westchester as well. So yeah, I kind of feel like he fits what the Knicks would want. He fits the kind of shot chart the Knicks would want, especially from their backup four. Because in general, it's a lot of we want you to take threes and we want you to drive, and he also draws a decent amount of free throws as well. So yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Clowney is somebody who I think the Knicks would probably look at really highly, and he would buck the trend a little bit because he's younger, but there's a lot of just young dudes in this draft.